Привет всем! После того, как меня убрали из Фейсбука за критику спецслужб США, я нашел другого человека, который занимается тем же самым. Дэниел Дэвис, отставной офицер армии США, аналитик внешней политики США. Он был одним из первых военных офицеров, публично критиковавших войну в Афганистане. Дэвис вырос в Далласе, штат Техас, поступил на службу в 1985 году. В дальнейшем карьера Дэвис служит в Германии, Ираке, бронзовую звезду получил во время бури в пустыне. Позже Дэвис ушел из армии, но в 2002 году, после атак 11 сентября, вернулся на действительную службу и был направлен в Пентагон. Во время второй командировки в Афганистан Дэвис был награжден второй бронзовой звездой и вышел в отставку в звании подполковника. Общественная деятельность. Дэвис был обеспокоен тем, что считал официальным обманом программу, предоставленную общественности об успехах войны в Афганистане. В 2012 году, вернувшись в Соединенные Штаты, он отправил отчет о своих наблюдениях в управление генерального инспектора Министерства обороны. Несекретные версии отчета были скопированы несколькими членами Конгресса Соединенных Штатов и опубликованы в Нью-Йорк Таймс. Дэвис также написал статью «Правда, ложь об Афганистане. Как военные лидеры подвели нас», опубликованную Armed Forces Journal в феврале 2012 года. Статья получила похвалу от нескольких законодателей США и получила освещение в национальной прессе, включая New York Times, Time and NPR. В 2020 году отставной подполковник Дэвис опубликовал книгу «11 час в Америке» 2020 года «Как внешняя политика Америки подорвалась и как следующая администрация может это исправить». В 2025 году Дэвис был выбран директором национальной разведки Тулси Габбард для назначения на должность заместителя директора по интеграции миссий. Габбард отозвала выбор до назначения Дэвиса после того, как просочились новости о его якобы неопределенности, что вызвало критику со стороны воинствующих элементов республиканской партии. А сам Дэвис республиканец. С 1925 года он является старшим научным сотрудником Фонда приоритетов обороны. Он также ведет подкаст «Дэниел Дэвис Deep Dive», в котором анализирует войну, национальную безопасность и политику США в мире. Я подписан на его программу и считаю, что подполковник Дэниел Дэвис – это голос разума в безумии американской современной политики. Дэниел Дэвис реагирует в режиме реального времени на новости о том, что президент Трамп приказал американским военным нанести авиаудары по 3 ключевым иранским ядерным объектам с использованием бомбардировщиков Б-2 и ракет «Томагавк». Трамп объявил миссию впечатляющим успехом, заявил, что возможности Ирана по обогащению были уничтожены и предупредил о более масштабных будущих атаках, если Иран не будет стремиться к миру. Это блеф. Более общая идея заключается в том, что этот удар представляет собой опасное пренебрежение верховенства закона, подотчетностью демократическим процессам. При этом многие сторонники Трампа, некоторые должностные лица празднуют удар, не заботясь о его законности и последствиях. Спикер предупреждает, что это может создать прецедент для бесконтрольного развязывания войны исполнительной властью и международного хаоса, что подорвет как усилия по поддержанию мира, так и правовые нормы США. В дополнение, 18 июня, то есть за 3 дня до применения Трампом глубинных бомб для разрушения ядерных объектов Ирана, Дэвис поставил на YouTube свое интервью с профессором MIT Тэдом Постолом, где они в деталях показали, что в данном случае глубинные бомбы практически не могут разрушить эти объекты. Эта программа так и называлась «Миф о бункерных бомбах». В данном случае, по-моему, Трамп просто подыгрывает Путину и показывает, что Америка не может достать его в бункере. А сейчас прямая речь подполковника Дэвиса.
We did is we have taken an active war against another sovereign country that violates the United States Constitution and it violates the 1973 War Powers Act. Point blank, categorical. I've already seen some of Trump's defenders who love this action and are really happy that he took it, and they're already dismissing, oh, it's not the 1973 War Powers Act doesn't apply. It does apply. Because what they're trying to say is that because there is the allegations that in the past, I'm talking many years in the past, that Iran took actions that resulted in Americans getting killed, i.e. they helped the Iraqi insurgency in 2005, reportedly, then that means that triggers the war powers provisions that the commander-in-chief can then say, our people were attacked, so now we can go here. Doesn't work like that. Unless you want to make the argument that it does, in which case you're making the logical course for Vladimir Putin to go to war with the United States, because that is precisely what us and all of our NATO allies have been doing for 3.5 years. Don't think you want to make that argument there. But see, no one's really concerned about the argument. No one's actually concerned about the rule of law. They don't care. They just say, we wanted to do this. We have the power. You can't do anything about it. So eat missiles. That's pretty much what we're doing. And listen to me, folks. That is a dangerous, dangerous place to be, because now then there is no rule of law. I've actually seen a number of Democratic senators and a couple of members of the House that are raising concerns, and that, you know, we weren't informed, or you didn't consult us to. There shouldn't be any question about concerns about being consulted. It was a blackout, flat out violation of the United States Constitution, which exclusively puts the war-making powers in the hands of the Congress. They didn't take it, and they are not without fault here either. All these guys who were making all these complaints here, AOC was saying, yo, now I think we should impeach Trump. More on that in a minute, on my views on that. But I'm like, where were you before all this? When he signaled very clearly, this is where he was going. I kept telling you, the sources that I had kept saying that the decision had already been made. Now we see that's exactly what happened. That was the case. And all this stuff that I said, when he announced that 2-week period, I said the most likely outcome is that was going to buy more time because all the pieces weren't in place. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't to get more diplomacy. It was because all the pieces weren't in place. And then once they became that way, then he launched the attack here. Now it brings up some other trouble and concerns here too, because that means all this talk about diplomacy, all these peace talks that we were doing weren't real. They were, I don't know if they were just buying more time. They were trying to disarm the Iranian side. I'm not sure, but it's very clearly because, by the way, we had a planned meeting the day after this bombing took place that we obviously knew about and chose to ignore. And so it looks pretty much like that the accusations from the Iranian side are right, that we were being disingenuous and dishonest, and we were pretending to go for peace when all we were doing is planning for war the whole time. These are serious allegations here, folks. Not allegations. These are serious charges, because we have done it. It's black and white that we have done this. There was no congressional authorization. There was no United Nations Security Council authorization that would authorize this, at least in the 2003 war, where Bush went into this bogus intelligence issue that said there were weapons of mass destruction. At least he had some kind of UN Security Council actions, and he had an AUMF from the Congress. Trump had none of that stuff. Do you see what's happening here? You are now at a place, we're not approaching it, we've passed it now, to where the commander-in-chief can literally do whatever he wants. He now has an armed force and a militia that is at his beck and call. He can literally use them anywhere for anything, and nobody's going to stop him. He's been using them domestically, and there's a very significant chance that he violated the Posse Comitatus Act by using active duty Marines in a policing function. That is a clear violation of the Posse Comitatus Act in domestic. So he's using troops domestically. He's even within his congressional authorization for the National Guard. He imposed it on a governor that didn't even ask for it and didn't want it, et cetera. So again, you see from Washington, with the use of force domestically or internationally, it's like his own personal militia. And that is, in fact, what it is. Who's going to tell him no? You had Secretary Hegseth just a short time ago, right before we started here. I was watching the live press conference where he just praised Trump up one side and down the other. And he's the only one that has the courage to act. He's the only one that has violated the Constitution and put your safety at risk. This is putting everybody at risk here, because let's go back to what he claimed about that this was a spectacular operation. All you did was drop some bombs on a target. That's the only thing you've accomplished so far. We are still, we're literally hours away from this. And what Iran's past has shown is that they take some time before they strike back. They examine everything, they count the cost, they take a look at the whole situation, where are they strong, where are they weak, and then they'll make some kind of counterattack. And especially over the last year and a half now, they are getting more and more bold and audacious and coming back and striking harder than they had before. There's now 3 times in April 2024, October 2024, and now this current round with Israel. They each time keep hitting harder and harder. And now Israel's paying a big price. Everybody's talking about these bombs that went off, but nobody's talking about, or at least not many in the West, are talking about there was some significant strikes by Iran into Israel overnight. And you know, part of that war that's already going on. That's not even talking about the U.S. yet. And understand, if they can penetrate the Israeli and American air defenses there, they can defeat them in our place, wherever else, in other places we are. But now Trump is attempting to be a strong arm and try to forestall that when he went on to, let's actually go on to the next one here. The next one here, where he says he's trying to actually lay the foundation to say why this was actually all justified, because those darn Iranians, they're bloodthirsty.
For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue.
See that language he's using right there? I decided I will not let this happen. Listen, for all of you folks out there who love Trump and are cheerleading this on, stop for a minute and consider what he's saying and what the ramifications are, because he keeps getting more and more bold. And I mean, he's doing all kinds of illegal things. I mean, he's violated the emoluments clause in the Constitution. He's enriching himself in direct violation of any number of American laws that prevent someone in an official capacity in their position in government, especially senior ranking, of enriching themselves off of their position. And he's doing it left and right, but no one's stopping anything. He keeps doing all these things that violate the law and the Constitution at increasing levels. And now he's being more and more bold about it. And I promise you, it's not going to stop here. If you think that, okay, well, he did that because we've been wanting to do that for a long time and now we're good. We're not good. We don't know where else he's going to go. And I haven't even gotten to the point about what the possible responses are from the Iranian side. We're going to get to that in just a second. But let's go to one more piece here, because this is also important here. One third piece from that statement last night by President Trump, where he's talking about, hey, folks, now it's peace or tragedy.
With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight.
Okay, part of that's true. There probably isn't another military in the world that can do that can project power halfway across the world and hit targets, hit pinpoint strikes like that. That's probably accurate. But then I told you, this is not over. He's still going and saying, if you think that's bad, that's nothing compared to what I'm going to do. So either you're going to, have negotiations, and let me translate that into English for you. You either capitulate and surrender, or we're going to keep going. And now then here's an area where Trump does not know what he's talking about, because we don't have the capacity to get into a sustained combat to where we're going to continue to bomb relentlessly, indefinitely. We don't have the ammunition for that. We don't have the offensive ammunition. We don't have the defensive ammunition. As I told you in our show yesterday, Iran, by all accounts, has a production capacity underground that's safe from bombardment from the side, that still is able to produce missiles of various calibers at an indefinite rate. And so they can continue on doing this. So like the strikes that hit Israel today, they can keep doing it at that pace. And because Israel is low on interceptor missiles and they're not that effective, then the missiles are going to keep getting through. So if Iran doesn't do what Trump wants, which is to surrender, what's he going to do then? What's your what next plan, Mr. President? This was like the classic mistake. We keep talking about all these the troubling analogies between the 2003 Iraq war and this 2025 Iran war, is that Bush and all of those folks, they thought it was going to be easy. They thought that it was going to go, the whole thing about flowers and everybody was going to love us. It was going to transform the Middle East into a beacon of democracy and all that nonsense. It was always nonsense. Now Trump seems to be falling into that category as well, of thinking that, yeah, I just threw a big bomb down there and now then they're going to capitulate. Well, what if they don't? You think that missiles are going to cause them to capitulate? Historically, most of the time, nearly all the time, in fact, there's a handful of exceptions, but the vast majority of the time, it hardens that person. You can look at Britain during the Blitz. You can even look at the Germans in the latter stage of the war. They were getting relentlessly bombed by the Allies, both the Soviets and the Western Allies. They never capitulated until the Soviets, they finally completely captured everything. They fought right to the very last. The bombing never stopped them. Obviously, the Soviet Union the same way. They suffered all these casualties. They never capitulated because of the bombings. Look at Ukraine. Ukraine has been relentlessly bombing now for about 2.5 years. Nearly every few days, sometimes every day. It has not caused them to drop out of the war. They keep fighting. Why do you think that suddenly that the Iranian regime is going to be different than everybody else was, and you're going to succeed? You hope that works, but what if it doesn't? What if it falls in the norm and they continue to resist? And the nuclear weapons program isn't ended, and they don't agree to your terms. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You don't have the missile capacity. You don't have the industrial capacity to keep doing that. I mean, already, we'll talk about this in another show, but already Ukraine is probably just dying right now because they see that what little has been coming through now is probably going to stop completely because it's all going to be going to the Middle East. And they're probably terrified of Iran continuing to wage war because that means that these missiles and diversions are going to keep going there and not into the Ukraine war. Obviously, that's making the Russian side pretty happy because that could hasten the end of that war because they simply don't have enough ammunition to continue waging conflict. We'll see how that talks. Like I said, we'll get into that more in another one. I'm talking right now about what the United States is going to do. And Trump has not thought this through. He's got plan A, and that's it. And all of his people behind him, you see that when Tulsi Gabbard dared to suggest that this might end bad, she gets sidelined. And then, it seems to, from all the evidence here, it seems like she's trying to keep her job, but then doesn't keep talking about that there was real consequences here if this goes badly. Then she didn't even get invited to the meeting. She was nowhere to be seen in any of the situation rooms or the big speech that Trump gave. She's nowhere on the scene there. So they've sidelined that. And who do they have? They have people that are all behind it. You saw Pete Hegseth just before we came on the air here, that he was just, fawning over president. So that's who he surrounded himself with. People that are going to tell him exactly what he wants to hear, which probably has very little to do with reality on the ground.
Ну и, конечно, резюме. Если вы внимательно слушали последние 2 минуты его речи, то здесь Дэвис выразил то, что действия Трампа явно совпадают с пожеланиями Путина. То есть в связи с вовлечением Трампом США в иранскую кампанию Америка практически прекратит поставки вооружений в Украину. Кроме того, глубинные бомбы не достигли цели, и это было просто очередной фарс Трампа. Повторяю, подполковник Дэвис является патриотом, республиканцем и человеком с правыми взглядами. Именно поэтому я обратил на него свое внимание, потому что и сам имею такие же политические взгляды. Игра Трампа в политику непременно приведет человечество к катастрофе. На Трампе играет Путин. Так считает подполковник Дэвис, и так считаю я. Но все же я надеюсь, что найдутся разумные люди, которые общими усилиями остановят затянувшуюся трамповскую клоунаду. И в окончании хочу еще заметить. Всем известно, как Путин любит игру в исторические даты. Я предполагаю, что именно он подсказал Трампу сделать удары по Ирану в ночь на 22 июня. То есть именно тогда, когда в 1941 году Гитлер начал войну против СССР. Я всегда был далек от конспирологии, но в данном случае, неужели это случайное совпадение? Надеюсь, что YouTube и Facebook не забанят это видео. А если это произойдет, ну тогда это уже точно конец света. Надеюсь увидеть ваши мнения. Пока.